Hello and welcome to the Preconceived Podcast, the podcast where we look at the purpose and the power of our thoughts. Did you know that each and every single day we have between 30 and 70,000 thoughts going through our minds? Did you know that each and every single one of those thoughts is really important? That it has the ability to push us into our destinies or to put us in holding patterns where we're bound to repeat the same mistakes and ideas over and over and over again? Well, we're going to talk about not just the power of our thoughts today, but how we have the ability to change those thoughts, how we have the ability to have those thoughts push us forward instead of holding us back. Stay tuned. Welcome once again to the Preconceived Podcast, where we ask the question, what are you really thinking? I mean, if you think about it, we have so much information available to us in 2019. We've got information no matter what you want to do. You can go to YouTube or Google and look up whatever it is you're thinking about. But at the same time, we also have more pseudo-sophisticated, mind-numbing, life-wasting material out there that's just meant to distract us. So simultaneously, we have the ability to either push our lives forward or to be distracted in a lot of different ways. We have the ability to see our lives improved or impeded, to see our lives change for the better, or to see our lives kind of repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And what is the catalyst for this, for better or worse? It all exists in one critical place. It's in our minds. It's in the way that we think. It's in the way that we process information. But did you know that you're not stuck with the same mindsets that you've always had? That we actually have the ability to change our mindsets, to think differently, to change situations before we even walk into them, and to allow those situations to be used for our benefit instead of being things that hold us back? It all comes down to a choice. We read in Deuteronomy 30 verse 19, it says, "I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you, that you have the ability to choose life or death. Oh, that you would choose life so that you may live, so that you and your descendants may live." Now that right there is an important choice that we have. We have the ability to choose life or death, and that's a decision that we have on an everyday basis. There's a reason why things like neurohacking and biohacking and all of these mind alteration things are out there, why something like the law of attraction has had so much traction over the last couple of years. The reason is because we know that this is an area of our lives that we need to improve on. It's an area that we need to improve on if we ever want to step forward in our lives. A few years ago, there was a movie that came out called Limitless with Bradley Cooper. It was all about this guy who was down and out, who could never really accomplish what he wanted to in his life. He wanted to do great things, but he always kept getting stuck in the same places until a friend of his gave him this magic pill. And this pill gave him the ability to open up his mind. He was able to do things like never before. He was able to write the book he always wanted to write, to think differently about situations, to accomplish things that he never thought was possible. And I know for each one of us, it would be great if we had a magic pill. If we could just snap our fingers and all of a sudden be able to focus on things the way that we wanted to use our mind in the ways that we wanted to. Unfortunately, though, there is no one-step quick method to be able to change our minds. It's a process. If any of us have ever tried to make a change in our life before, we know this process well. We know the pain that can be involved in trying to change things in our lives. But the fact of the matter is unless we change our thoughts, unless we change our thinking, those outcomes are always going to be the same. We need to learn to think differently. The great news is that we absolutely do have the ability to change our thoughts, to change our minds, and to change our lives. The hard part, though, is that it requires something from us. It requires an intentional changing of the way that we think. So how do we do this? How do we change the way that we think? How do we change the way that we've always thought all of our lives? The answer is simple. It's with one thought at a time. But how do we change that one thought? How do we change those thoughts when we walk into these situations? We need to start by identifying what we're thinking so that we can start to change those thoughts. We need to start to identify the patterns of thinking that we have before we ever walk into the situation. Now, this isn't the ordinary way of doing life. This isn't the common way of doing life. But if we want to see our lives changed, if we want to see the ordinary become extraordinary, if we want to see the common things in our lives be elevated to new levels, we have to be willing to do something different than we've ever done before. It all starts with one place in particular. It's the way that we look at ourselves. Now, for me as a Christian, the place that I want to start is who God created me to be. It's the place where I start to see myself as God sees me. Because if I start to see myself with an elevated perspective, then my thoughts and the way that I view the rest of the world are then elevated. They become something that is propelling me forward instead of holding me back. So how do we start to do this? How do we start to look at ourselves the way God sees us? This once again is a process. Romans chapter 12 verse 2 says, "No longer be conformed to the ways and the thinking of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." We need to allow our minds to be renewed by inputting truth into those places that were holding us back, into those places that spoke lies and negativity about ourselves. We need to be transformed, which is, again, that process that we talk about, where we go from a place of thinking the way that we always have to a place of thinking in a way that's going to actually be beneficial to us going forward. And I think this is a great time of year to start making this change. I mean, we're in January, the place where we make New Year's resolutions, right? To start to change things about our lives. The problem is, though, by week 1 or week 2, we've already lost a lot of them. We can't make this a resolution. If we want to change the way we think, this is a process that we have to be resolved to stick with, to look at our thoughts, to identify what we're thinking, and to choose to think different thoughts. If you're at all interested in this, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, hit the like button, because each week we're going to be talking about a different facet, a different area of our thoughts, and we together are going to start to change our thoughts so that we're seeing things from a higher perspective, knowing that we can move forward, that the past does not have to be our future, but that our future is bright because we know that we have the ability to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. See you next week.